So welcome back to another episode of the Engineering Future Podcast. I have Dr. Nehemiah Mabry here from STEMedia. It's been a pleasure just to follow STEMedia for a little while. I wanted to have you here on the podcast for some time, and I'm happy that we finally decided to record this episode. How are you doing? What's new in your life?
Oh man, I am great. First of all, I'm glad we finally got to do it as well. I've definitely seen your work, seen it out online. So I just really admire not just the fact that you're giving back and you open up people's awareness of insight to engineering and things like that. I think it's just admirable to be consistent as you've been too. Keep it going because it's not always easy to stay consistent. So shout out to you. What's new in my life? I am continuing to elevate and inspire in my own domain, man. STEM media, that's really the mission. And we are building our network. We're building our content, continuing to serve universities and corporations that really believe in attracting and retaining diverse STEM talent. And so we're doing that through our videos, through our events, through our podcasts, things like this. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I've been following STEMedia for I don't know how many years now, and it's just been great to see not only elevating STEM in general, but like elevating minorities in STEM, elevating everyone in STEM, because I think that's a big goal of this podcast. It should be a big goal of a lot of people kind of sharing content online. So I think that's something that I
yeah.
really appreciate. I just want to start there. Like, where did STEM media started? I know I've heard a few um, interviews you've had in the past, but I'm curious, where did it start, and why did you start STEM media in the first place?
Yeah, grad school, man. I was grad school pursuing my PhD in structural engineering and mechanics. And being a person, I'm sure like yourself, who has a lot of different interests, right? Even though I'm pursuing this highly technical field, I was into stuff like drama. I was a musician. I really liked art, visual arts, as well as performing arts and things of that nature. And so I always wanted to combine the two, even before I heard of the acronym STEAM, right? You got STEM, STEAM. And so and it wasn't until I realized of the campaigns that were going on to really encourage participation and really endurance in engineering specifically. And so this one campaign called "Stay With It," sponsored by Intel, MTV, a lot of people involved, and I was like, hey, they want students to enter this video contest, and so that was kind of my opportunity I saw to combine all these things I was interested in. Like I'm about to make the Nike commercial, the Gatorade commercial, the NBA Finals commercial of engineering, man. And at least that's what it was in my head, right? And as I look back on it, it's still on YouTube. The very first STEMedia video on YouTube. Um, it's not exactly what I had in my head, but it was innovative compared to everybody else that entered into the contest. And so, I won that contest. To make the long story short, and then it kind of spiraled. It continued to snowball from there. Other people continue to ask me to do things similar, and yeah, moved to online, and it just became this content machine.
Yeah, that's amazing. And one of the things that really sparked my interest is you have a PhD in structural engineering.
Yeah.
I'm also a structural engineer. I work in bridges. I know you work in bridges also, and it's just interesting to see, because when you think of an engineer, you don't think about someone that is an entrepreneur, someone that likes to do public speaking, do all the things you're doing. Um, where did that mindset kind of came from? And I know you still work as an engineer,
Mhm.
and still have this company kind of that is empowering thousands of people, students and engineers every day. Where does that mindset comes from being an entrepreneur, and what would you tell other students or even young engineers that are thinking about doing something like that, and just see engineers, or the misconception of society that engineers are quiet and they don't really like to do these kind of things?
Yeah, yeah. So I never really fit that mold to begin with. I've always been a curious person into a lot of things. And so part of it, I just have to acknowledge, like, say, my parents, right,
Hmm.
growing up in church, having to perform or recite things in front of the congregation and, like, participating in like community events. And so really just the outgoing nature is something that was just a part of me from childhood, right? But when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think a lot of us have entrepreneurial characteristics, we just don't realize it, right? Because
Hmm.
engineers know how to make a product. Like we know how to provide quality. We know how to make sure we think through a process, see where the potential failure may be, right, and try to shore that up. And so some of that was also really just a part of being a problem solver. Because when you're starting a company, you're just solving a problem for a customer. And so engineers know how to solve problems. The part that I had to then learn, and this is what I would say to people who are also starting to like awaken to those possibilities. The part I had to learn was really what it meant to monetize it, right? Put it into a business, get to a point to
Mhm.
where people can say, I have this problem. Oh, here's a company that can solve it. How much is your price? What is your quote? Send the invoice. Like those types of things are the parts that I think had to be learned. Not only that, but like building a team, keeping accounting, making sure you're not spending more money than you're making. Marketing and advertising, which in many ways is also becoming like a second nature for younger generations because of social media and stuff. So
Mhm.
those are the things I would say though, those complementary skills were necessary. But man, a large part of it, the seed, I think is already in a lot of us, man, just from our childhood.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, as engineers, we like to think a lot about the details, and I know there's a lot of details in creating a business and
Yes.
making it work at the end of the day. But we are not great at. I've felt to do this too. We're not great at showing how great we are as engineers, and if we have a business, showing how great the business is.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, you have probably hundreds or thousands of videos online with STEMedia, with everything. How can someone develop that skill of showing the things they're doing and showing like not like not like the pride of doing the great things,
Oh
but
yeah.
showing
I
it
get it.
in a humble, in a authentic way? How come engineers and like young engineers and students in general can be better at doing that?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Man, listen, here's the thing. I get it because that's what I struggled with. Even maybe a little bit still to this day. Like we feel like if we start saying, "Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me," we're being vain, we're being prideful, and sometimes, depending on what the situation is, it may fall into that category.
Hmm.
But I look at it like this, Luis. Like if you were hungry, you're really hungry, and you're trying to find somebody to make, I don't know, tacos. Like for some reason, you just like, yo, I really need a taco. I'm just throwing that in there, right? And I knew how to make really good tacos, but I never told you, Luis. Hey, at my house, I got some really good tacos, and I know you really want some tacos. Me by me not saying anything about the solution I have for you would be selfish, right? Like it's actually the inverse. We think, well, I'm staying humble. I'm not gonna say, but no, I actually have something that you want. I have something that I actually believe is the best out there. And so when you're talking about your solutions and your company, which you have to provide, we have to change our mindset and say it is really selfish at times to not say something because I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want people to think of me like that. It was like you're more valuing the way that other certain people who you're not even trying to serve perceive you, and that's causing you to be quiet about a solution that you literally have for some people. And so that really helped me to change my perception, not just of my business, but even like the things I've accomplished, my PhD. Like I was afraid to even like call myself doctor for a while, right? Because I was like, I don't want to sound like I'm trying. But I realized like there are certain people that when they hear the word doctor and they see my face, they realize, oh, that's possible for myself. And so I got to the point where I realized that even marketing, even advertising, even putting yourself out there isn't about you, right? It's ultimately about connecting people to things that can help them. So that's it.
Yeah, that's very true. I struggled with that so much when I started this podcast because I was with the mindset that nobody's gonna really want to hear my story. Like, what's different about me? There are other engineers that are probably doing better things than I am. They're
Yeah.
probably doing other engineers or students or just other people doing better things than I am. But what you just said there, it's about the individual story. I have a unique background. I come from Colombia, Latino in STEM. We're
Yes.
definitely a minority in the field. So sharing my story, there's going to be other students. I've already received, I mean, hundreds of emails from students from other countries, Latinos, Hispanics, and everything, looking at
Mm-hmm.
me doing all of these things online. And just by sharing these conversations, by sharing what I'm doing, not even I don't even think I've been insightful in some of these conversations, but just sharing my story, sharing my failure, my success, everything, they already see that there is someone else doing things that they want to do in the future. And I know
Mm-hmm.
you're of the mindset of if you can't see it, you can't do it. And
Mm-hmm.
showing people, other Hispanics, other Latinos, that there is room for us to be part of these organizations, be part of
Mm-hmm.
committees that are doing a lot of great things in the profession. That's where the mindset comes from. And I feel like I've struggled with that in the past, but I'm trying to be better at just sharing my story a little more. And I know you're a big proponent of that. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate all STEMedia is doing and just sharing the stories of all the minorities and just empowering people to do great things online.
Right. No, I appreciate it, man. And the thing is, my story is going to reach a certain group of people. There are certain people that are going to resonate, and there may be people that are not necessarily where I'm from and who I am that can still benefit from my story. But nevertheless, there's a group of people that I can't reach like you reach, Luis. You know what I mean? Like my story is going to be like, oh, that's inspiring. But then they hear
Mhm.
your story for this, whatever this group of people is, they're going to be like, oh no, that's it right there. That's me. You know what I mean? So we have to make it ourselves available, regardless of even who may be doing it already. And that's what STEM
Mhm.
media is seeking to do, right? Not just build it on me and my story, but also create a platform where stories like yourself, people from Colombia, people, from Africa, people who were born in the South, raised in the North, male, female, right? Non-conforming, like all these people can find themselves promoting their stories so that people who are inspired by those stories can now see it because we've elevated it, right? Made them more aware.
Mhm.
And then now we can build more and create more of those stories.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Why do you think uh, diversity is important in STEM? Like, do you think there's value in diversity in STEM?
Absolutely. Absolutely think there's value in diversity in STEM. Couple of things, right? So we always talk about diversity of thought, right? That's one of the
Hmm.
things. If I were to tell you right now, if we just said the word cat, right? And you thought about cat, you may say, "Oh man, cats are so nice, warm, fuzzy," because you had a cat growing up and you spent a lot of time with this cat, right? Is this an example? For
Hmm.
me, where I grew up, oh, cats, they were fierce. We used to go at it. Like they would just be scrapping it, be coming over, eating all the food, whatever. So the next thing that comes to my mind when we hear the word cat, we both think of cat, the word cat. You're thinking warm and fuzzy. I'm thinking fierce, nails, claws, scream. You know what I mean? And so our experience changes the way that we naturally think about the same thing. You know what I mean? It's a different lens. And so you make that analogous to the problems that we solve in STEM, analogous to the products that we create in STEM, analogous to the way that we teach STEM, right? It's going to change the lens and how it's presented. And so if you only get in the warm and fuzzy, just for an example, perspective of something, then your solutions will fundamentally be leaving out the people who had the fierce, the clawy experience. You know what I mean? And so these diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds are needed so that the solutions and the things we create can encompass a greater variety of people. That's why it's ultimately important. And second of all, here's the thing. Second of all, I think that the more that people can be involved in something, the more we can even unlock the innovation of mankind in general, right? So think beyond that particular company and solving that problem or that particular classroom. Now because I'm in STEM and there's somebody in my circle who I may be the only PhD engineer that they know, realizes that there's something possible beyond whatever they're in the middle of. And so they go and they pursue, I don't know, a PhD in nuclear physics, right? It's not engineering, but somehow me being involved in what I'm doing, let them see what's possible. So now they can go innovate over there, right? And then somebody else sees something else and they can say, oh, it's possible. Let me go innovate over there. And so really there is a value, even though people don't quite realize it, in the subjective or the experiential view environment of seeing what's possible that ultimately pushes humanity forward as a whole, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you never know who is going to invent the next, I don't know, top of the line technology that is going to facilitate the big, like solve the biggest problem on earth. Like you never know where that person is coming from.
Yeah.
And I'm part of a few committees right now, some leadership and so on. And it's always interesting to see the conversations that kind of unfold in those groups. And we have people from all different backgrounds, which is amazing because we get all these different perspectives. But at the end of the day, like it's like the path towards that leadership and the path
Mm-hmm.
towards becoming a better engineer overall, it comes from so many backgrounds that it's hard to create a course or a program that fits one type of engineer because my experiences are going to be completely different than your experiences. And like same like the story or your analogy with the cat, my background, my cultural background, and the way I see life and the way I see everything I do in my career is completely different than the way you see it.
Right.
And by combining those two, we have a bigger understanding of maybe
Right.
what's better for the career, what's better for the programs we're developing, everything. So I think it's just, yeah, super important to have more diversity in STEM. I think we can always use more diversity in STEM. Everywhere I go, I'm usually the only Latino that is in the room or in the
Hmm.
group and everything. So it's always hard for me to like identify myself in those kind of groups. So hopefully I am someone that in the future people can look at me and say there is Luis. He's a Latino. He's in these committees. Maybe I can be in those committees to do it, making great change in engineering. Um,
Hmm.
Let me ask you something. Where does your passion for speaking come from? I know you say your parents play a big role. I don't know an engineer that loves speaking as much as you do, or at least show it as much as you do, because your energy is contagious everywhere. I see you're speaking on social media, all these webinars and everything. It's always contagious to see your energy. Where does that passion come from? And maybe walk us through the process of maybe someone that wants to get there. How can we train to be better public speakers as engineers?
Oh man, that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that way before. I've been asked how I got started speaking, but where does the passion come from? Believe it or not, I didn't always want to speak. Like I used to like run away from it. My mom would be like, "Go and talk to this grown up," and I'm like, "I don't want to talk to this grown up. What do they get mad at me? You know, whatever things gonna happen." So I think it was sort of like, mm, maybe as I started to get into college, that I started to embrace it, and really for me it became the art form of using analogies that I was learning in the technical classroom to then inspire people. And I use this phrase all the time, and it's right there in the back of my office right there. There's something inspiring about inspiring. And so really I feel like what inspired me and the passion comes from the ability to literally transfer, positivity and energy and hope and like aspiration to someone else, and literally see that activate, that comes back and gives me that same energy. Like today, like I've been working, I had a lot of like meticulous stuff to do as an engineer. But even getting on this right now, I promise you, when we're done, it's gonna be like, oh man, Luis, let's go change the world. You know what I mean? And so there's something semiotic for me, and I don't know if I'm giving you an origin of it, but maybe it's even spiritual at that point. Like I've listened to a lot of other people who've spoken in STEM, outside of STEM, inspirational, educational, whatever it may be. And so when I hear it, all of that kind of like fuels into my own efforts to elevate and inspire. And so that's the best answer I got for you right now, Louise. I'm gonna be honest with you, but it
That's
is sort
great.
of like semiotic, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Something I heard you talk about in a previous, I think it was an interview. I don't know how many months or years ago, was like your goal is to share STEM in a fun and entertaining way. And I know
Yeah,
STEMedia is working on a platform, or already has a platform out that is all about STEM entertainment. So I think it's just so well fitted that your passion for speaking, your energy and everything, it's kind of creating these resources for STEM. Because whenever you think of STEM, whenever you think of engineering or science or everything, you think of older people sitting in front of a whiteboard, writing equations, and not having really energy or passion about what they're teaching. Do you want to share a little bit about this STEM entertainment media and everything you're doing with STEM
yeah.
media? Because I think it's very interesting, and I'm excited to just learn more about it.
Sure. Edutainment is the term we use, education and entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It's been around for a little while, but that's what we call our platform. STEMedia.com is our STEM edutainment streaming platform. I'm still in beta
Mm-hmm.
because it's just a lot of strategizing and developing that it goes into really getting it to the place. But really teaching things in a more relatable manner, right? Things that you could perhaps learn in your classrooms, or even things that you may be able to pick up a book and read, but presenting it in a light and video form mostly that is culturally relevant, right? It's colorful, is attention grabbing, and also like very much, like I said, reflective, or like you said, reflective of what I like to do on stage when I'm able to speak. So we're looking to build out courses around things such as interviewing, career development in general, right? Networking, being able to even dive into how do you find your right STEM career, right? How do you determine what your purpose, engineering your purpose, which
Mm-hmm.
is a course that is launching right now. So that is really the goal of the STEM Media Network that we're building, and to provide again an amplified place for other voices beyond myself, because that's one of the things I've learned too. Again, there's only so much my story can do. And I see that, this podcast, Engineering Our Future, is another avenue, another channel, another source, a brand that is really kindred spirits what we're trying to create at STEMedia.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I've been following again STEMedia for a while, and I just really enjoy all the videos, information, everything, just shown in a way that maybe a lot of people haven't seen it before, and it always gives
Mm-hmm.
them just the opportunity to see STEM as a career, as a place where it's fun. Like physics is
Mm-hmm.
fun; it's a lot of fun. But a lot of times we see just professors or people think that it's not, and it's just about the numbers, and it's just about just sitting in front of a desk or a computer, just writing equations and all that stuff. But
Right.
the outcome, I think that's one of the things that really um, attracted me to engineering, is just seeing the outcome of the things you're working on a daily basis, the equations, the finite element models, everything, just seeing how that turns into a reality later on. um, what is your advice for students or young engineers? I know you're big on both recruiting somehow recruiting students to
Mm-hmm.
become engineers or like be in the STEM field, as well as retaining younger engineers to stay in the field after they graduated and maybe feel a little discouraged with maybe a job that wasn't the right fit for them, or just a career that maybe is not bringing a lot of value to them. What would you tell those students, and what is your advice for them?
Yeah, yeah. So my advice, and I teach this in engineering purpose course, is first of all, you have to ask yourself some important questions, right? And that is, who am I? You mean, and it don't have to be super deep, but like, what are my talents? What are my values? What is my experience, right? What do I want? That's a biggie, because people feel afraid to ask themselves that. What do I want? And then, of course, why does it matter, right? Let's try to get an idea of the deeper purpose behind even the things that we're doing. If you can gain clarity on those things, who am I, what do I want, and why does it matter? That gives you some sort of roadmap for moving forward. And then, so in addition to that, you can't just get stuck with saying, here's how careers look in this field. This is how they've always
Mhm.
looked in this field. So I guess I have to do it that way. No, I actually don't believe that there's one size fits all careers or job titles. And so when you have that clarity, you sort of want to imagine what type of career. We live in a day and age right now where you can literally have like the a title that at one point meant that you would be working in the basement 10 hours a day, not talking to anybody. You could literally do that in a totally different form. You could do that 3 hours a day and do something else because of the internet, right? There's so much
Mhm.
flexibility out there that we don't realize is available, and that we don't even seek for it because we haven't even asked ourselves those questions or answered those questions. So I think get clarity on that. Really imagine what you're aiming for, what you're striving for, and then sort of work out a plan. Begin to look for people who may have done something similar, pick up things here and there. Okay, this person actually became an engineer and they started their own business. All right, I like that. Oh, this person actually became an engineer, but then they eventually became a school administrator. And I would love to do that because I'm still having my credentials, right? Like find those what they say, success leaves clues. So those success
Mhm.
stories that can give you bits and pieces that you can incorporate it into your own blueprint, right? Because their problem, their design isn't exactly like yours, but there are certain things in their design that you can apply to yours. And so I'll stop there, man. There's so much more I can share, but you got to get some clarity. You got to be able to allow yourself to think outside the box and then really devise a plan based on what you see has already occurred.
Yeah, I'll just tell people, just go check STEMedia. They probably have an answer for a lot of these questions, and if not, other people have the answers in the community. I just wanna hear from you. What was it like to be a structural engineer working in bridges? I know you work sometime for NASA.
Hmm.
What was that like? And then how did that role change once you started STEMedia?
Yeah, yeah. So working in bridges is fantastic, right? I got into engineering at NASA, but I was studying civil engineering. But when I got to my PhD program, that's when my research started to shift towards bridge applications,
Hmm.
and more specifically, repairing bridges and monitoring those repairs with the material known as carbon fiber reinforced polymer, so composite materials. That was my research, right? And so when we started to look at that, I was like, okay, here's an opportunity for me to be able to work in the field. A lot of engineering, like I love that NASA, but this particular field had shorter time frames, shorter project windows. that I could then, drive by in a couple of months or next year and say, hey, I had a hand in that, or I did that. You see, here's this picture, as opposed to, sort of the longer term
Hmm.
projects, involved in space travel. So with that being said, I got into bridge design and primarily did a lot of analyzing, designing, and inspecting a bridge. You do inspection, Luis?
We don't. We actually do dismantling of bridges, so like bridge
Okay,
demolition, repairs, and
got you.
everything. My thesis was actually on inspection of bridges using drones, which was pretty cool. And I haven't been able to
Ah,
use it
okay.
after school, and has come as a topic once in a while in the company, but I haven't been able to use that technology at work yet.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, got you. Yeah. So inspection was a part. I was at a smaller firm, so it was a part of my job description as well.
Hmm.
Maybe like 2, 3 times a month, right? When I looked at the bridges, and that was cool because it almost was like therapeutic, right? Sometimes these bridges are over creeks, over water. We just kind of there looking at stuff. The wind's blowing. The weather is beautiful. So I enjoyed that part. Designing was something that I did as well, but the bulk of it was analyzing, like rating
Hmm.
bridges, determining how strong they are, what type of loading capacities or load ratings we need to give it for future service. And so I did a lot of that, was able to really analyze it and really determine how certain things may be defects, but don't affect the bridge that much. Other things may appear to be small defects, but are actually pretty serious, So I got to do a lot of that as well, and still do it occasionally as well. So I started STEMedia in my spare time. It was a side hustle for the largest amount of
Hmm.
time up to this point, but only recently that engineering becomes something that I do now part time. So I do engineering now part time, and now STEMedia. And we're talking about less than half a year right now, just a couple of months in this current state, where STEMedia is now the majority of my week.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I actually interviewed a guy last year. I think that was last summer that does like underwater uh, bridge inspection using like lidar and everything. I thought was super
Yeah.
interesting. There's a lot of things that structural engineers do around just structures in general that is always interesting to find um, how people are just doing their job and just using technology to accomplish all of that. So that's just super interesting.
I'll tell you
Um,
this really quick. I used optics. I studied deep into optics at one point, as a civil
mhm,
engineer, because we were using sensor fiber grading sensors, which is fiber optic
yeah.
cables, right? And so we were studying how the optics change based on like a concrete cracking. And so I'm
Hmm.
studying waves and intense amplitude and all that stuff, right? So it could really get involved, to your point, even in the field of civil engineering.
Yeah, and some people don't even realize how much civil engineers use like programming and computer analysis. I mean, when I was doing
Hmm.
my research, I developed this. I mean, really simple like MATLAB code to analyze an image, take the sharpness and like entropy, and then analyze everything to make sure the image was like well lit and was
Yeah.
useful to identify cracks. We use a few software to like measure crack length from pictures taken from the drone. So there's a lot of computer stuff that civil engineers do that I think a lot of people don't realize. When you think of mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, they're writing codes, they're deep into this computer programming and everything. But civil engineers actually do a lot of that also.
Yeah, totally, totally. Thermography was another thing I did. To your MATLAB code point, putting Fourier transforms on data images and looking at. Yeah, you're right. We do a lot of that, all
We do a
that.
lot of stuff, yeah. And I mean,
Hmm.
it's the stuff that we do is people are using it every day without even realizing, which is um, means that we're doing our job correctly. So
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
always fun to just talk to people and just share what I do as an engineer, as a civil engineer, and they don't really realize how much of what they use every day is related to like civil engineering. So it's always fun to talk to people about that. Where do you see the future of STEM going? Do you see new technologies coming up? Do you see a change of how minorities are working in STEM? What do you see the future of STEM in general and kind of moving on in the future?
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of things. You talk about programming just now. I see that becoming more of like a basic skill, right?
Mhm.
You got adding, subtracting, coding logic. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be normal, right? For young kids to try to understand how we communicate with our software, how we communicate with our computer, our devices. Another thing is going to be a part of, I think, normacy is just data management, because everything is data, right? And we're getting more and more we're getting an increasing ability to capture data. But I definitely think that once we get to a point where it's like data is coming in from all sources, right? How do you then take that data and make it something useful? That's going to be something that is going, it's already a big deal, right? Big data.
Mhm.
But I think it's going to continue to be like something we don't really think about anymore. It's like, yeah, of course I'm being monitored with my heart rate and I'm going to know that how many times I blinked today or just random stuff, right? And it's going to be our ability to be able to manage that data and harness it to do even more powerful things, right? So I think those are things that are currently emerging right now. In terms of the future, this far, far beyond, I also see, and this is probably more from my entrepreneurship view of things, I think the way companies are structured are going to change a little bit as well, right? We see a little bit in the change of the remote and how you can have distributed teams. You can work for a company where nobody in the company is literally in the same city. You know what I mean? Things like that.
Mhm.
But even more than that, I think that engineers, and I get this, Luis, I think engineers would be able to get to a point to where if you are really an expert in something, you could be just like the celebrity, the freelance celebrity in that. You know what I mean? You see how like this basketball analogy, LeBron basically goes to any team he wants to go to because they know that if they bring him on board, he's going to help them win a championship, right? Like I think engineers, not all engineers, but I think it's a possibility for the upper echelon for people who really become experts in certain areas of STEM can sort of be that free agent to say, yeah, I'll come work for you real quick, NASA. NASA's like, come, we'll give you the signing bonus, help us get to Mars really quick. And you're like, all right, cool. You know, man, now I'm going to go over
Yeah.
here and figure out how to use AR for the entertainment industry, right? So it's just different stuff like that that I think is we're set for to really have a breakout.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with just the personality and the image that we as engineers are trying to portray to society. Like, if we still portray ourselves as quiet and people that don't really do much for society, that's how society is going to keep seeing us
Right.
for many years. But
Yeah.
if we're doing things like you're doing, public speaking, talking about engineering, the importance of our careers, people are going to start realizing that
Right.
engineers play a big role in society. I mean, just see in the past few months with the building collapse in Florida, all
Right.
the eyes are on structural engineers, all the eyes are on these experts to create a more safe environment. People are
Mm-hmm.
turning to structural engineers for inspecting the bridges, making sure the infrastructure is safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I maybe I didn't realize it when I was younger in my career, but I don't think the image of a civil engineer, of a structural engineer, was that big as it is right now, where people are actually turning to us
Yeah.
to tell them that their structures are safe and their structures or the things they use every day, yeah, are safe. So I think there's a bright future for engineers. We just need to
Yeah.
like show ourselves as more key members of society, which I think we have we have a long way to go. But
Yeah.
it's always great to see in my few years of being an engineer how far we have come, from
Right.
my point of view. Um, so I just want to thank you for coming to the podcast. It's been a pleasure and an honor to talk to you. You are doing some amazing things with STEMedia and everything. I just have
Thanks,
one
man.
last question for you, and that's how can we continue engineering our future?
How can we continue engineering our future? Go back to the advice that I gave a little bit earlier. Gain clarity on where you're going. Um, embody the confidence that you have what it takes to get there, and go after it despite whether or not other people can see it. It's your vision. You see it. Go after it. Of course, you're providing value in the process. You're making the world a better place. But get that confidence and clarity and go after it.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, don't be scared to share your story. There's going to
Mm-hmm.
be hundreds, maybe thousands of people that will identify with what you're doing. And I'm sure I've seen that with this podcast and everything I'm doing online. Again, like I told you, I had no idea where this was going, but I just knew that something in me said, you need to share this. You need to at
Yeah.
least talk about it because other people are going to find value in it. So that's some great advice. Again, thank you so much for coming to the podcast. It's been a pleasure and it's been an honor. And
Yeah.
where can people find you, find STEM Media online, and some other resources you want to share with everyone?
Yes, so my personal website is nehemiahmabry.com. If you're interested in me speaking at your school, your company, to help inspire your employees, empower your students, your staff, to really stay with it. But also STEMedia, one word, one M, STEMedia.org is to learn more about the organization, the team, and things like that. But .com is where you can see our platform. Our platform and some of the content we've been creating. So STEMedia.org and .com. And then lastly, I'll say we have an annual flagship event every November, the STEM Success Summit, that will also take place this year. So go to STEMSuccessSummit.com, sign up on our list, and that's coming down pike as well. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah, I attended last year and it was amazing to hear all these speakers. There's a lot of inspiration in there, so I'd really encourage people to attend it and see what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Luis, by the way. I'm honored to be on here. I really appreciate this opportunity. Again, appreciate you reaching out. I love what you're doing. And keep it up, man. Keep it up.
Yeah, thanks for coming to the podcast, and we'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.